The new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't clone you, but it can streamline your hiring workflow. From posting jobs to shortlisting candidates to interviewing, LinkedIn Hiring Pro is the hiring partner you need, so you can focus on connecting with the right talent. In fact, small businesses report saving over 6 hours per week. So hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
Instagram teen accounts have automatic protections for what teens see and who can contact them, plus time management tools. And Instagram will continue adding built-in safety features to help create age-appropriate experiences. Learn more about teen accounts and Instagram's ongoing work to protect teens online at instagram.com/teen accounts.
If we knew more about our sleep, what would we do differently? Would we go to bed at a consistent time or take steps to reduce interruptions to our sleep? With Sleep Score, Apple Watch measures your bedtime consistency, interruptions, and sleep duration. Then, every morning it combines these factors into an easy-to-understand score from 1 to 100. So you'll know how to take the quality of your sleep from okay to very high. Know your sleep score with Apple Watch. iPhone 11 or later required.
After years of training, hard work, dedication and sacrifice, you'd imagine that after becoming an Olympic champion, your phone would be red hot, with brands, sponsors wanting to partner with you. But Olympic gold, or even double Olympic gold, doesn't necessarily mean the next steps are necessarily easy to negotiate. I'm John.
And I'm Michael, but that is all changing thanks to a new platform called Sponsor. This is great British bosses from anything but footy. Now, Sponsor has been launched by a man who knows all about what it takes to stand at the top of the Olympic podium. But he also understands how tough it is in the commercial world, where brands have traditionally had a fragmented approach to helping athletes unlock their value.
And I'm Matt Richards, a two-time Olympic champion and also now the founder of Sponsor, a platform designed to help athletes with exactly that.
So, yeah, that's the question. The first question, what is Sponsor and why have you created it? Great to have you on the podcast, Matt.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Sponsor it's a place where athletes and brands can connect for paid partnerships and activations in its simplest terms. So athletes can download an app and browse through various different campaigns that have been listed by different brands. We've got over 35 brands on the platform so far, and just over 30 days since launching, accumulating in over £30,000 worth of cash value alone so far, with everything from photo shoots to long-term brand affiliation, social media, etc. So it's a place to help athletes find ways to make more money in sport, and in doing so, give brands access to really powerful marketing tools that have been proven time and time again to garner great results.
So how difficult is it? You are a double Olympic champion, but then how tough to navigate your way through those opportunities that might come your way and some that might not for whatever reason?
Yeah, it's a tough world to break into, and it's becoming increasingly more so for athletes, I think, probably because of the kind of shift globally in this kind of marketing world toward its influencers, micro creators, and that sort of new crop of marketing assets for brands that has come through. And realistically, athletes are competing for the same budgets as all of those influencers, all of those creators. But a lot of athletes don't necessarily know that or understand it, or therefore know how to position themselves to get access to it. And so it's becoming harder and harder for athletes to make money from their sports. And you know, that's not to say that athletes aren't valuable to brands, because again, they've proven that they outperform influencers across almost all forms of campaigns for brands. But it's difficult for brands to find them, and even more difficult for athletes to find the brands. So that's where this platform's been born from.
So Matt, how does that actually work? So you're the double Olympic champion. What do you do?
So if I were to download Sponsor today, all I would do is create my profile, go through and list various different bits and pieces like my career highlights, any previous experience with sponsorships, if I've got any, some photos and things like that, my social medias, and then my profile's created. Our team then verify all of the athletes that go onto the platform to make sure they are who they say they are, make sure they are the right people to be putting in front of our brands and they are athletes. And once that process has been done, which so far we've been able to do in less than 24 hours for everybody that's come through, And so then at that point, as an athlete, I can just go through, look at the different opportunities. If I see one I like, I can literally go onto it, click apply. I'll write a little 250 character message for why I think I'd be a good fit for it, list my fee for that. And so the brands will put a guide budget, and I can then list what I would be willing to do it for. It might be slightly above, might be slightly below. And then at that point, it gets sent off to the brands. They will then shortlist, contact the athletes, contract them within the platform, and everything's done, ready to go.
And so the brands come to you rather than going individually to the people.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a number of brand partners that we now have on the platform, which is growing week on week. Obviously, as we continue to grow as a company, but the idea being that the brands can then list what they're looking for, and they'll put different tags on it. If they're looking for somebody in a specific sport, then they'll say that. If they need somebody that's got 100,000 followers on Instagram, they'll say that. But actually, most of the brands that we're working with are looking for smaller athletes at the moment that have got between that kind of 1,000 and 10,000 followers on social media. They're doing a great job in their sport. They've got credibility. And they want those kind of people to be endorsing their products and working with them on photo shoots. And that's where we've now got just over 3,000 athletes on the platform that service just that. Everything from Premier League footballers and WSL footballers, multi-Olympic champions, all the way down to grassroots junior athletes that are doing great, but still really early in that sort of commercial career.
And where did the original idea come to you from? What kind of was behind it?
So it kind of all started from my experience, really, and from that, other people around me. So I realized after Tokyo that there's money to be made in Olympic sport around the games. When you do well, there's money to be made probably 3 months before, 3 months after is that golden period for you to make some cash. Post Tokyo, that 3 months after, where I had a bit of success, started to see the money coming in. And I was like, well, this is great. There's great money in high performance sport. Thinking somewhat naively, as an 18-year-old probably would, that was just going to continue then, and that would be my career from then onwards. And there was a very harsh reality a few months later when the Olympic buzz died down, and all of a sudden we as Olympic athletes just kind of disappeared. We weren't a focus for brands anymore. There was no commercial opportunities really out there, and then saw that on the build through into Paris that the closer we got to the next games, the more started to come up, more opportunities. And then again, after the games, there's a few months where you can make money and then it disappears. And so that was where it was all born from. And my experience, I spoke to over 30 other athletes across various different sports, 10 different sports. Spoke to a number of brands as well and decision makers that I'd worked with in the past to understand their side of it and understand if this is something that's just a unique issue for athletes, or actually if finding athletes and working with them can be challenging as well, and found that it was. And that's where the concept for finding a solution for this problem came from, and many iterations and cycles of development and feedback later, we came to what we've got now.
Because I remember speaking to a lot of people in the build up to Paris, and they were shocked when World Athletics, for example, announced that they were giving prize money to medal winners. They were shocked that you guys don't get any prize money at the Olympic Games. They were stunned about, in fact, how little money you earn from doing your sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really tricky one. The Olympic sort of movement, if you like, was born from this place of amateur sports competing against each other around the world. And inherently, an amateur sport, you would assume, shouldn't have money behind it. It shouldn't be backed by sort of massive budgets. But the difficulty is, as the sports have moved on, the majority of those Olympic sports have become professional. They are, sports where you can't compete in swimming at the very highest of levels and try and do another job at the same time, because most jobs just won't fit your training schedule. You can't just take 2 months off to go to a training camp in the Olympics. It's not how it works. But the cash behind it still hasn't moved on. And I do think there's an element of that where the governing bodies of the sports, like the IOC, World Aquatics, etc., need to work with their athletes to move that on, and to find ways to make the sports more commercial, more of a spectacle, and therefore more cash available to go to those athletes and support them on that journey. But in the meantime, I think the sort of the ownership has to be on the athletes to be able to do that, which is really difficult. And that's exactly, again, why we built Sponsor, to make that as simple as possible for athletes in all sports to find those opportunities, know what they look like, know what brands are looking for, and be able to access and apply to them immediately with no kind of gatekeeping or hiding of that.
I mean, Michael and I love the Olympics, which is why we do a podcast and talk about it all the time. But when you say 3 months after the Tokyo Games or 3 months after the Paris Games, it all dries up, it does show how difficult it is, as you say, for an athlete to really work out where they're going to go, where they're going to get that extra funding from. And also it's the time, Matt, as well, because you guys are training to be the best at what you can be.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where, especially before an Olympics, that's where the real challenge is, I think, as an athlete, where you've got to decide how much of your time are you prepared to divvy up between training and the prep for the competition, and then those opportunities that do come in the months leading into the games that can be really lucrative and a few and far between outside of that period, but actually may take you away from training for a day, or they may take you to another country for a weekend for something that pays really well, but actually you've got a couple of travel days where there's risk of illness. And there's all of those things that you have to think about as an athlete and with your team to really try and weigh up the risk to reward of everything that comes in. And it's not, there's no rule book, it's on you to try and decide that, which is what makes it so hard.
And I think you mentioned as well, the IOC and World Aquatics need to do more. Could they do more in staging events that are just as big as an Olympics? How do we go about making sure that your world championships are just as important? I know you're a former world champion, are just as important as Paris 2024, Tokyo 2020.
Yeah, it's a really tough one. I think, especially in swimming, I think athletics do a better job of it with having something like the Diamond League, where there's something that you can engage in as a fan and you can watch frequently. See those athletes that you want to follow and follow their journey, their story into the major competitions, which makes then the sort of the fan base for the sport a little bit more diehard, where they feel like they're invested in that journey. Swimming, for example, there's none of that. You watch the Olympics, you might maybe, if you're a big fan, watch something like a World Champs or European Champs. But outside of that, most people don't know that you've got a British Champs going on in April. They won't know that we've got random competitions here, there, and everywhere around the world throughout the season because they're not a part of a structured system. They're just random sort of satellite events that happen, which are great and often get great engagement with the people that are there, and are really exciting to be a part of. But actually, there's no structure to follow on as a casual fan, which I think is where the difficulty comes then in being able to get the commercial side to the sport right if you haven't got the fan base able to easily and consistently engage with it.
We had Drew Barron on this podcast before from Aquatics GB, and we were talking to him about, with athletics, that you mentioned the Keeley Classic that they staged in Birmingham. And we were saying, well, why don't you get Léa Marchand and Katie Ledecky and all the best British swimmers, bring them all to the Aquatic Centre in London and put a big thing on? And he said, can be dangerous when you pin an event on a name. And we saw that then with Keeley. She got injured the day before. Yeah. So you probably don't know. If you did, you'd probably be running the whole caboodle. But what is the answer in your view?
I think it's like most things in a business sense. It's going to require some pretty substantial financial backing at the beginning with a risk that it doesn't pay off, which is the difficulty, because it is a risk, and the institutions that will want to or be able to facilitate it will have to take a risk to make it happen. But I think that the solution to it is some form of a more structured league setup that builds into things like the major competitions, like a World Championships, like an Olympics, where that's the kind of crux of that season. But there's something to follow along from early on in the year all the way through to the summer. Then there's a few months of sort of downtime for the athletes to do their pre-season and have a bit of a holiday and all of that, and then back to it again a year later, where there's something there. When you look at all of the sports that are the most commercial in the world, all of your American leagues, things like the Premier League and the football leagues around the world, Formula One, etc. All of those really, really commercial and sort of high-profile sports, they all have that league basis behind them. And again, when you look at Olympic sports, the only sport that is really kind of head and shoulders above the rest in terms of the commercial opportunities for the sport and therefore for the athletes is athletics, which again has that league setup. So I'm a firm believer that that's what it requires and that's what it will take. But having said that, like I say, it's finding the cash to start it up, and finding the people that are willing to put up that cash with no guarantee that they will get a commercial return, because it's never been done before. So I think that's the difficulty there. And if we could find those people, I'd be more than happy to help them get it done, but it's going to be hard to find them.
Yeah, and difficult to sustain, because as we saw in athletics with Michael Johnson and the Grand Slam track, we've spoken to a number of British athletes that have been left out of pocket, and that is the last thing that we need you guys to be left out of pocket for.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and that is the difficulty, is that there is risks to those kind of models, especially when they're new, especially when they're not tried and tested. But I think there's elements to all of those sort of things that can be learned, because this sort of thing has been tried and it has been done in other sports, sometimes successfully and sometimes not, which means there is somewhat of a playbook out there to learn from and draw on when trying to implement it into a new space like a sport like swimming.
I suppose that's the frustrating thing when you know that there's a lot of money being literally pumped into enhanced games, that they have a huge backing and they've got this money that's coming in. And actually, wouldn't it be great if they just backed a sport that was clean, rather than pumping it into something that is just a freak show in some ways? I think that's my real frustration. That I agree with you. I think there is a real option for the Olympics and World Aquatics or whatever to have something new, but you need the backing. But then there are people with that money, but they're choosing to back something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the frustration there is you've almost got to look at what's making them want to back that, and what's the commercial model for something like an enhanced games that makes it attractive to the investors that they brought on. And I don't know the ins and outs of it. As I've said publicly, I've tried to kind of stay away from it and try to not get involved. But from my perspective as an outsider looking in, it seems to me the commercial model there is the pharmaceutical world in the US. And that's where the big money will come back to investors longer term. I believe that's where they plan on making their money. The television rights and things like that, sponsorships, etc., will do well. It will make good money, but it's not going to be enough to warrant the cost that they're going to be putting out. Whereas that might be, So I think that's probably the reason why they've gone to back that, because it's almost, it sounds terrible, it's almost a quick buck for the people that are getting involved, where there's a clear and quick return for them. Regardless of if the league is sustainable for the athletes or if it's good for the sports, they don't really care, because the money's going to be there for them either way.
But we also know that there are businesses that are ready to back sport and really bring them on. Barclays with the WSL, for example, has transformed since the Euros, since the Lionesses. You've got the Premier League darts, which is being funded, and how that works. And even the Saudis backing boxing. It wouldn't be my cup of tea, but they've really pumped that money into boxing, and it's changed the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you see it in triathlon as well. That's a sport that is inherently an Olympic sport, but has now got that sort of league format to it that's got big backing. It's doing great things for the athletes, and it's performing really well commercially as an entity. So, like you say, there is a proven model of this that works, and it does garner results for the businesses that back it. And I think, especially in this day and age as well, where entertainment as a whole is becoming more and more digital, it's becoming more and more online, where you can consume it from anywhere on your phone. Sport is one of the only elements to the entertainment world that still has to take place in a physical venue where there's going to be fans and people in the crowd. There's an element to that where there's something really unique about sport that won't be taken away by AI. It won't be taken away by this shift into digital media. And so actually, if the right people get behind it at the right time, build out the right systems and things like leagues for sports like swimming, there's a real opportunity there to create a business and an investment opportunity that is lucrative to the right people. But it's having the people in place that see that vision and want to pursue it and are willing to kind of take the risk and take the jump. That's the difficulty.
You're listening to Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy, in conversation with two-time Olympic gold medalist Matt Richards, also the founder of Sponsor, a new sports tech platform aiming to help brands discover and connect with athletes more efficiently. Before we have a little look back and reminisce about your Olympic medals, which we absolutely will be doing very shortly, if something like Sponsor had existed a year, 2 years ago, could we be in the position where someone like Ben Proud wouldn't have felt the need to join the enhanced games for the financial rewards that it's going to bring?
Yeah, it's a really difficult question. I think there's an element to it where I'd like to think that the long-term impact of Sponsor will mean that less athletes will feel they need to go down that route, because there hopefully will be more commercial opportunities. There'll be greater transparency in what those look like and what the athletes need to do to position themselves for them. I think, if we can get to that point where we can support athletes on their journeys by what we've built, we've served our mission and we've done what we set out to do. Would it be enough to stop athletes going to things like the enhanced games? It's impossible to say, because the budgets and the money that's being put behind the enhanced games at the moment is enormous, and will likely still outweigh the money that athletes could make in their sports, even with commercial opportunities. But I would like to think that there will be athletes that may be able to make enough from the commercial opportunities in their sports through things like sponsor and what we're doing with that side to the sport, that the increase in what they could earn from something like an enhanced games isn't anymore worth the sort of the moral cost to going.
So before we get into that reminiscent part of the podcast, the last question, will you watch any of the enhanced games, or is it not of interest to you?
No, I don't think so. The blessing and the curse of running a business at the same time as continuing to compete is that time is pretty sparse at the moment. So I'm sure, Ben is a good friend of mine. He always has been, and he always will be. I personally disagree with his decision to go to the enhanced games, but he's still somebody that I care about and somebody that I want to see do well. So I'll keep an eye on how his results are. The same way I would have if it was any other competition. But outside of that, I don't think I'll be tuning into any of the broadcasts to see what's happening. It's just not. It's not something that's sort of interest enough to drag me away from the day job at the moment.
You know you need fiber for a healthy gut, but do you actually know how to get it? Quaker's been serving up fiber since 1877, with over 100 great-tasting, good source of fiber options to choose from. Whether you like old-fashioned oats, instant oatmeal, granola, or oatmeal squares, Quaker makes it delicious. So good. Get your fiber with Quaker. Shop Quaker's good source of fiber products at a store near you.
This is Great British Bosses from Anything But Footy. So excuse the pun. Let's dive in to your swimming career at the moment. You were at the European short course, I think, in December. I think you came third in the 100-meter freestyle. Is World Championships this season? Commonwealth Games? What's the plans?
Yeah, so we've got Commonwealth Games in the summer, which is obviously up in Glasgow. So that'll be fantastic. It's always great when there's events of that scale held in the UK. It gives you that buzz when you've got the crowd behind you. You can hear the atmosphere. It just gives you that little edge. So it's going to be great to be there at that, and that's kind of my real focus this year. But then just after that, literally about a week after, I believe it is, we've got the European Championships over in Paris as well. So that'll be great to head back over to France a couple of years after the Olympics. Go out there. I think we're putting a big focus on that from a relay perspective as well. So that'll be really good fun to go out there and really hit some of those relays with the other lads, which will be great when we've gone from all competing against each other at Commonwealths across the various different home nations to come together again, have a good hit out at European. Should be great fun. So the season's shaping up nicely so far. Good results for me in December and really good results so far in the new year. So just building towards trials in April now, where we'll get to see where we're at for the first time this year.
I know we'll talk more about Paris in a minute, but on the relay gold that you retained, so you, James Guy, Duncan Scott, Tom Dean, 4x200 meter Olympic gold. You won it in Tokyo and you won it again in Paris, and no one had ever done that before in the history of the sport. Is it, sorry to ask a really cheeky question, because there was only 3 years in between?
Potentially. Who knows? Who knows? It's a difficult one to answer, isn't it? Because I think if we push Tokyo forwards or back to the original year, I believe we would have still won that, and I believe it would have been the same 4 people. So I don't think it would have made a difference. But it's one of those where it's impossible to know if it had been a year earlier, would the journeys of everyone between then and Paris been different? Who knows? I think we'll have to wait and see if we can do it again in LA, and that'll tell the tale, because that'll be 7 years then. So
you won't know this, of course, because you would have been totally focused on your final that night. But you were, from a domestic point of view, up against Andy Murray for eyes and ears that evening, because he was competing at exactly the same time as you were competing, and we thought it might be his last ever professional match, but we also thought you might win the gold medal. As it worked out, we managed to cover both. I think he finished and then you guys went in. But what memories? I mean, how cool is it to be a double Olympic champion? And Andy Murray, of course, is a double Olympic champion as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's it is pretty cool. It is pretty cool. It would have been cooler if I could have been 3/100ths faster on the individual 200 and been a triple Olympic champion. But we've got time left yet. Still, I'm only 23. I've got time in my career to put that right. But no, it's awesome, and it's something that if you'd have offered that to me back when I was a little boy early on in my career, and it wasn't a career back then, but early on in the sport, I would have been baffled and blown away by that. So the fact that I'm able to sort of sit here now and say that, and I've got my medals on display over there. I can see them. I can just sit at my desk and look across, and I've got 3 Olympic medals, 2 of them gold. It's a pretty cool thing to be able to have done, and something that no matter what happens in the rest of my sporting career or the rest of my life, that's something that I'll always be able to sort of cherish those memories and be proud of that achievement, because it's been such a massive part of my life.
What condition are those medals in? Because the Paris ones, as I understand it, weren't particularly well put together, despite having a piece of the Eiffel Tower in them.
Yeah, so the Tokyo one is literally pristine. Like, it looks almost exactly as it did on the day we got given them, which is awesome. The Paris one's a little bit less so. The gold from Paris is actually holding up a little bit better than the silver. Maybe that's because I don't like the silver as much, and that's why I've not looked after it as much, maybe. But the silver is pretty battered, for lack of a better word, and the gold is definitely it's seen better days. And look, the IOC said, hey, we'll happily replace them for you and give you new ones. But to me, I don't want a new one. I want my medal. And those, regardless of how ugly they may become over the years as they continue to deteriorate, they'll always be my medals. And so it's the meaning behind them more so than I think just purely the look of them. And I suppose I can always give them a little polish here and there if I really need to.
It's a great talking point as well, isn't it, as to why it happened that way. A couple of final questions from me. Looking ahead to LA, how big is the swimming going to be in LA? And does it matter that it's switched from swimming going first week to athletics, which has always been athletics? It's always been that way in the Olympics, and then it's going to be the other way round. So you will be going, in effect, second week. What does that mean for the sport?
It's an interesting one. It's very unique. It probably means there'll be less chaos in the village in the second week of the games, because the swimmers won't have been let loose, which is usually a bit of a talking point, isn't it? So I think that'll probably be a good thing for everyone else competing at the games. But no, I think it'll be really interesting to see what that does, flipping it on its head. We've never, or at least in my memory, I've never remembered seeing the swimming in the second week of a game. So it's going to be really interesting. It'll be cool for us as well, actually, to be able to see and the difficulty with being on day one of an Olympics is that you don't really get to experience or see or feel that Olympic buzz or that Olympic kind of energy that there is at those competitions, where there's just that feeling, and that it's hard to put your finger on, but there's something that you can feel as an athlete, and you don't get to feel that until the games are started. And because we get started straight away, you only feel it once you get going. So it'll be really interesting as an athlete to flip it around and kind of start to feel that buzz and start to feel that energy and get into that environment before racing. What it'll do to things like performances and viewership figures and all of that sort of stuff, I have no idea. It's going to be really interesting to watch, and to look back at after the games. But from my perspective, I don't really mind when I'm racing, as long as I get to have my hit out in the pool. I'll be happy. And
have you ever swum in a football stadium before?
Never. No, I mean, we did La Défense was a rugby stadium, wasn't it? So we've done rugby. So upgrading it now to an American football stadium that's probably triple the capacity will be pretty cool. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what that looks like, because I've never actually been to an American football game, so I've never even been in a stadium, let alone competed in one. So it'll be quite a cool experience, I think.
Before that, Tollcross, Glasgow, as you say, that's the big focus for you this season. The Commonwealth Games organisers will be pleased to hear that, I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, from my perspective, the Commonwealth Games so far has kind of been the one that's gotten away in my career. I've obviously only done one of them so far, and that was in 2022, where I was just having a bit of a duff year. I wasn't swimming all that great. So the performances at Commonwealth, they weren't bad. They were my best of the season. I was fourth on 5 different events across individuals and relays. So, it's not bad results, but it's not the results that I like to see. So yeah, for me, this year's it's an important one. I've got a bone to pick with that, and I want to put those performances right. And very rare that I'll get to compete with a Welsh cap on. So it's important to me that I get that right this year and bring home some silverware or goldware, shall I say, for Wales.
And just finally, then, for people listening, and we know that lots of athletes and we know that brands listen to this too, what would be your sales pitch, your elevator pitch then about Sponsor?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there's two elements to it. As an athlete, it's never been easier to find and access opportunities to earn from your sport. Everything from some free kit from brands like Castor to multi-1,000 pounds for different campaigns, £1,000 for a day's worth of photo shoot, etc. There's been over 33 different opportunities so far, accumulating over £30,000 in cash value, plus all of the free kit that comes along with it. And we're only just getting started on that front. So for athletes, download Sponsor, have a look at the app and set your account up. It's never been easier. And then for brands, I think same message. It's never been easier to find athletes. We've already got several case studies from successful campaigns that have been run with athletes through our platform, that have produced great results, both in terms of photo shoots where they've come out with fantastic content that's been used across social media, websites, digital, etc. All the way through to marketing campaigns on social media that have garnered great reach and engagement for those brands. So, if you're interested in working with athletes and you think that could be a powerful tool for your marketing team, then reach out to us direct, myself or Ted Croson on LinkedIn, and we'd be more than happy to have the conversation.
Well, it's been absolutely fascinating hearing from an athlete point of view about some of those particular challenges that face you guys in the commercial world. Matt Richards, founder of Sponsor, two-time Olympic gold medalist. Thank you for talking to Anything But Footy and Great British Bosses.
Thanks for having me.